Recently in France, a teacher was showing cartoons of Muhammad to his class in order to start a discussion on freedom of expression. A jihadi decided to brutally murder the teacher by beheading him in order to punish him for blaspheming and making fun of the Prophet of Islam. Due to these recent events, we will be looking at the topic of, does Islam allow a person to kill someone for mocking or criticizing Muhammad? Firstly, let's take a look at what the punishment for blaspheming Muhammad is according to the Quran. Surah 53, Ayah 33. Surely, the only recompense of the ones who wage war against Allah and His Messenger, and diligently endeavor to do corruption in the earth, is that they should be massacred or crucified, or that their hands and legs should be cut off asunder alternatively, or that they should be exiled from the land. This is a disgrace for them in the present life, and in the hereafter they will have a tremendous torment. So, from this verse we can see that those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger, Muhammad, or cause corruption on the land should be punished by being massacred, crucified, their hands and legs should be cut off from alternate sides, or they should be exiled from the land. But what do the words wage war mean in this verse? Does waging war include blasphemers or people that mock or make fun of Muhammad? Let's find out in Ibn Kathir's explanation for the verse. Ibn Kathir states, the recompense of those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and do mischief in the land is only that they should be killed or crucified, or that their hands and their feet be cut off on the opposite sides, or be exiled from the land. Wage war mentioned here means oppose and contradict, and it includes disbelief, blocking roads, and spreading fear in the fairways. Mischief in the land refers to various types of evil. So, wage war means to oppose Muhammad, contradict Muhammad, disbelieve in Muhammad, blocking roads and spreading fear. Therefore, criticizing Muhammad, mocking him, making fun of him with cartoons, blaspheming him, and even disbelieving in Allah and Muhammad is all deserving of death, being crucified, having your hands and legs chopped off, or at the very least being exiled from the land. Therefore, you can see that one of the punishments for blasphemy against Muhammad is that the person should be killed. Now let's go to the hadith to see how Muslims should respond to someone who blasphemes Muhammad, criticizes Muhammad, or mocks Muhammad. Sahih Muslim 50a. Never a prophet had sent before me by Allah towards his nation who had not among his people his disciples and companions who followed his ways and obeyed his command. Then there came after him their successors, who said whatever they did not practice, and practiced whatever they were not commanded to do. He who strove against them with his hand was a believer. He who strove against them with his tongue was a believer, and he who strove against them with his heart was a believer. And beyond that, there is no faith even to the extent of a mustard seed. So, what this hadith is saying is that prophets are sent to nations and they give commands and establish laws. Their followers obey their commands, but later generations come along and they don't obey their commands. So the true followers of the prophet have to strive against these people with their hands, i.e. physical force, then their tongue, i.e. rebuking and condemning them, and if that's too dangerous, then they can strive against them with their heart, i.e. by inwardly despising the evil and rebellion against the Prophet and waiting for the day when the Prophet's commands can be enforced with the hand. According to the Prophet, if you strive with your hand, you're a believer, a Muslim. If you strive with your tongue, you're a believer, a Muslim. And if you strive with your heart, you're also a believer, a Muslim. But if you don't at least strive with your heart, if you don't hate rebellion against the Prophet's laws, you have no real faith. You are not a Muslim. Now for Muhammad, he's not just the prophet for a certain nation. When it comes to Muhammad, he is the final prophet, the final messenger sent to the entire world. So his commands are for everyone. So when a filthy kafir is blaspheming, mocking, or criticizing Muhammad, they are breaking Sharia law. The Muslim response should be to strive against mockers, critiques, and blasphemers of Muhammad by using physical force. If they don't have enough power to do this, they should condemn them with their tongue. And if they don't have enough power to even do that, then they should at least strive against the blasphemers in their heart. So, if someone is blaspheming or mocking Muhammad by using cartoons, the Muslims should strive against that person with physical force, i.e. killing them. Some other hadith that contain similar reports are Sunan ibn Majah 4013, Sunan ibn Majah Book 5 Hadith 473, and Sunan an-Nasai 5008. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Did anyone ever get killed for blaspheming, critiquing, or mocking Muhammad? Well, let's take a look at Sunan Abu Dawud 4361, where a woman was killed for slandering and disparaging Muhammad. Narrated Abdullah ibn Abbas. A blind man had a slave mother who used to abuse the Prophet and disparage him. He forbade her, but she did not stop. He rebuked her, but she did not give up her habit. One night she began to slander the Prophet and abuse him, so he took a dagger, placed it on her belly, pressed it and killed her. A child who came between her legs was smeared with the blood that was there. When morning came, the Prophet was informed about it. He assembled the people and said, I adjure by Allah the man who has done this action, and I adjure him by my right hand that he should stand up. Jumping over the necks of the people and trembling, the man stood up. He sat before the Prophet and said, Messenger of Allah, I am her master. She used to abuse you and disparage you. I forbade her, but she did not stop. And then I rebuked her, but she did not abandon the habit. I have 2 sons, like pearls from her, and she was my companion. Last night she began to abuse and disparage you, so I took a dagger, put it on her belly, and pressed it till I killed her. Thereupon the Prophet said, O be witness, no retaliation is payable for her blood. So, a woman was slandering and disparaging Muhammad. She was warned by her owner, who was a blind man, not to do so, but she continued to do so. So then the blind man decided to stab her in her stomach, killing her in front of a child. The next morning Muhammad was informed about the murder and wanted to know who was responsible for it. The blind man stood up with fear that he might be punished, but after explaining himself and saying that she used to abuse and disparage the Prophet and he was defending Muhammad's honor, Muhammad responded by saying, O be witness, no retaliation is payable for her blood. So the blind man would not be punished for murdering a woman as she was slandering and abusing the Prophet. This example shows that blaspheming, critiquing, or mocking Muhammad is punishable by death. Now that I have explained and shown that the punishment for blaspheming, criticizing, or mocking Muhammad is death, we know that when a teacher shows cartoons slandering Muhammad and his reputation to his class, he can be slaughtered by Muslims as a punishment. Now, getting back to the recent events that occurred in France, let's take a look at how the Muslim community reacted to the escalation of events that unfolded after the French teacher Samuel Paty was brutally beheaded by Islamic extremists for showing cartoons of Muhammad to his class to start a discussion on freedom of expression. Speaking at the wake of the school teacher, the French Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron called him a quiet hero and added that France would continue to produce cartoons and defend anyone's right to do so. Additionally, as an act of solidarity, the Prime Minister Macron decided to project Charlie Hebdo cartoons onto a government building in France to show that France supports free speech. France gives the rights to its citizens to draw cartoons, France allows for the criticism of people's beliefs, and France stands up against Islamic terrorism. In response to Macron's actions and the decapitation of a teacher, instead of the Muslim community entirely condemning the beheading of a teacher, numerous heads of states in the Arab and Muslim world have called for the boycott of French goods and products, and protests have been held globally against what Muslims are calling Islamophobia by the French president. Additionally, Muslims have responded by saying that we shouldn't be able to offend other people's religious beliefs. They also say that we should have freedom of expression and speech, but only if it doesn't insult or offend people. Well, I think I get it now. I think I understand. The Muslims want us to have freedom of expression and speech only if it doesn't insult people or their religious beliefs. You know what? I wonder if Allah and Muhammad could live up to the Muslim standard of not insulting people or offending people's religious beliefs. Let's take a look at the Quran to see if Allah insults people for their religious beliefs. Surah 9, Ayah 28. O ye who believe, truly the pagans are unclean, so let them not after this year of theirs approach the sacred mosque. So Allah is calling pagans unclean due to their religious beliefs. Isn't this offensive to pagans? Let's go to the Tafsir for Quran chapter 9 verse 28 to see how the top Muslim scholars describe the unclean pagans. In the Tafsir of Ibn Abbas, he describes the idolaters as unclean and impure. In the Jalal's tafsir, they describe the idolaters as unclean, they are filth on the account of their inner vileness. And in Ibn Kathir's tafsir, he describes the idolaters as filthy in a religious sense, and that they are mushrikun and they are impure. So the pagans are unclean, impure, and filthy. Now isn't this offensive? Allah is calling people unclean and filthy based off their religious beliefs. Are you now going to condemn the Quran? Of course you won't. Clearly Allah can't live up to the Muslim free speech standard of not offending people for their religious beliefs. Additionally, let's go to Quran chapter 98 verse 6, where Allah insults Jews, Christians, and polytheists. Indeed, they who disbelieve among the people of the scripture and the polytheist will be in the hellfire, abiding eternally therein. They are the worst of creatures. So, Allah is saying that Jews, Christians, and polytheists are the worst of creatures. Worse than pigs, worse than spiders, and worse than leeches. In fact, in Ibn Kathir's tafsir for the verse, he says that we are the worst of all the creation that Allah made. Isn't this offensive to Jews, Christians, and polytheists? Isn't this insulting people based off their religious beliefs? Are Muslims going to rebuke Allah for not living up to the Muslim standards for free speech as he insults people based off their religious beliefs? Of course they won't. We see Allah say a similar thing in Quran chapter 8 verses 55, where he says, "Indeed, the worst of creatures in the sight of Allah are those who have disbelieved." So Allah again is calling disbelievers the worst of creatures. And when we go to the tafsir of Ibn Abbas on this verse, we see that it says, "Lo, the worst of beasts of created beings in Allah's sight are the ungrateful Bani Qurayza and others who will not believe in Muhammad and in the Quran." So, from this Quran verse and tafsir, we can see that those who don't believe in Muhammad and the Quran, i.e. everyone that's not a Muslim, is the worst of created beings, and Ibn Abbas likens us to beasts. So it's clear from Quran chapter 9 verse 28, chapter 98 verse 6, and chapter 8 verse 55, that Allah insults all non-believers based off their religious beliefs, saying that they are the worst of created beings. But Muslims will still insist that we shouldn't be able to mock the Quran, their prophet, or their religious beliefs, as it offends them. Well, clearly, Allah in the Quran couldn't live up to the Muslim standards of not insulting people or offending people based off their religious beliefs. Furthermore, in the Quran, Allah compares non-believers to livestock. Quran chapter 25 verse 44. "Or do you think that most of them hear or reason? They are not except like livestock, rather, they are even more astray in their way." Let's go to the tafsir of Ibn Abbas so we can get a better understanding for the verse. "Or dearest thou, O Muhammad, that most of them hear the truth or understand such truth when they listen to your words. They are in relation to understanding the truth, but as the cattle, which know nothing but eating and drinking, they are with regard to the truth like this. Nay, but they are further astray from proof and religion, because the cattle have no ability to understand proofs." So, what this tafsir and Quran verse is saying is that people who hear Muhammad preach and still disbelieve are like cattle and livestock who hear the truth but don't understand. So Allah is going and insulting people again by comparing them to livestock. Muslims, isn't this offensive to non-believers? Doesn't this violate the free speech guidelines that you want in place? Are you going to condemn the Quran now? Of course you won't. We see Allah compare disbelievers to sheep again in Quran chapter 2 verse 171, where Allah says, "The example of those who disbelieve is like that of the one who shouts at what he is nothing, but calls and cries cattle or sheep, deaf, dumb and blind, so they do not understand." So here Allah is comparing disbelievers to cattle and sheep, as they are deaf, dumb and blind. But let's go to the tafsir of Ibn Abbas and see what he says about the verse. He says, "Allah then gave a similitude regarding the unbelievers via Muhammad, saying, the likeness of those who disbelieve via Muhammad is as the likeness of those who calleth unto that which hear nothing, just like camels and sheep with their shepherd. His speech is unintelligible to them when he says to them, for example, eat or drink, except a shout and a cry, death, concerning the truth, dumb regarding the truth, blind to guidance, i.e., they pretend to be deaf, dumb, and blind when it comes to the truth and guidance. Therefore, they have no sense. They do not understand Allah's commands and the call of the Prophet, just as camels and cattle do not comprehend the words of their shepherd. So we see from Ibn Abbas's tafsir and the Quran verse that disbelievers are like cattle and sheep. They can't understand Muhammad's speech and his guidance, so they are deaf, dumb, and blind. So again, the Quran violates the Muslim standard for free speech. Are you Muslims now going to condemn the Quran? Of course you won't. Moreover, we see Allah compare Jews to donkeys in the Quran in chapter 62 verse 5, where it says, "The example of those who were entrusted with the Torah and then did not take it on is like that of a donkey who carries volumes of books." So we see from this verse that Allah is comparing Jews to donkeys who carry volumes of books as they did not follow the Torah. So it's clear from these Quran verses that Allah is insulting people by comparing them to livestock such as sheep and donkeys. Once again, Allah can't live up to the Muslim standard of not offending people or insulting them. So if we're going to apply the Muslim standard of having free speech as long as it doesn't insult or offend people and their religious beliefs, then the Quran would be banned as hate speech, as it is offensive to everyone who's not a Muslim. Moving on from Allah and how he insults people and offends them, let's see if Muhammad could live up to the Muslim standard of not disrespecting other people's religions and their religious symbols. Sahih al-Bukhari 2478. The Prophet entered Mecca, and at the time there were 360 idols around the Kaaba. He started stabbing the idols with a stick he had in his hand and reciting, "Truth, Islam, has come and falsehood, disbelief, has vanished." So Muhammad came to the Kaaba, a place where the polytheists worshipped their gods, and disrespected their idols by stabbing them. Now, was Muhammad wrong for stabbing the idols of the polytheists? You say that it's wrong to disrespect other people's religions and their religious symbols, but that's exactly what Muhammad did. Are you now going to rebuke Muhammad for disrespecting other people's religions? Of course you won't. Now let's take a look at Muhammad to see if he lived up to the Muslim standard of not offending or insulting people. Sahih Muslim 2912d. The last hour would not come until the Muslims fight with the Turks, a people whose faces would look like hammered shields, wearing clothes of hair and walking with shoes of hair. So Muhammad said Turkish people have faces like hammered shields. Isn't this insulting to Turkish people? Isn't this offensive to them? Are you Muslims now going to condemn Muhammad for offending Turkish people? Of course you won't. You only care when the insults are against Islam. Some other hadith that report Muhammad saying that Turkish people have faces like hammered shields are Sunan Abu Dawud 4303, Sunan An-Nasai 3177, Sunan Ibn Majah 4098, Sahih al-Bukhari 3592, Sunan Ibn Majah 4099, Sahih Muslim 2912a, Sahih Muslim 2912b, and Sahih Muslim 2912c. Furthermore, Muhammad again showed he couldn't live up to the Muslim standards of free speech without offending or insulting anyone when he said that Ethiopians have heads that look like raisins. We find this in Sahih al-Bukhari 7142. It says, Allah's Messenger said, "You should listen to and obey your ruler, even if he was an Ethiopian black slave whose head looks like a raisin." So first of all, this is showing that Muhammad compared Ethiopians to some of the worst people that could become a ruler by using the words "even if" when saying you should listen to and obey your ruler, even if he was an Ethiopian black slave. Secondly, he says that Ethiopians have a head that looks like a raisin. So again, Muslims, isn't this being offensive and insulting towards Ethiopians? Are you going to say that Muhammad was wrong and he violated your own standard of free speech by saying that Ethiopians have heads that look like raisins? Of course you won't. Some other hadith that report Muhammad saying offensive things about Ethiopians and saying that they have heads like raisins are Sahih al-Bukhari 696, Sahih al-Bukhari 693, Sunan Ibn Majah, Book 24 Hadith 108, and Sahih Muslim 1298a. Finally, Muhammad again showed that he didn't live up to the standard of free speech that Muslims demand when he insulted and offended women. Sahih al-Bukhari 7099. Narrated Abu Bakr, during the battle of Al-Jamal, Allah benefited me with a word I heard from the Prophet. When the Prophet heard the news that the people of Persia had made the daughter of Khosrow their queen ruler, he said, "Never will succeed such a nation as makes a woman their ruler." So, Muhammad said that a nation will never succeed if they make a woman their ruler. Besides this fact being completely false, what an insulting and offensive statement this is to women. Additionally, Muhammad also said that women are deficient in their intelligence. Sahih al-Bukhari 304. Once Allah's Messenger went out to the Musalla to offer prayer of Eid al-Adha or al-Fitri prayer. Then he passed by the woman and said, "O woman, give alms, as I have seen that the majority of the dwellers of the hellfire were you women." They asked, "Why is it so, O Allah's Messenger?" He replied, "You curse frequently and are ungrateful to your husbands. I have not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you. A cautious, sensible man could be led astray by some of you." The woman asked, "O Allah's Messenger, what is deficient in our intelligence and religion?" He said, "Is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man?" They replied in the affirmative. He said, "This is the deficiency in her intelligence. Isn't it true that a woman can neither pray nor fast during her menses?" The woman replied in the affirmative. He said, "This is the deficiency in her religion." So we see from this hadith that Muhammad said women are deficient in intelligence, and he backs this up by saying that the witness of two women is equal to that of one man. Furthermore, in Sahih Muslim 79a, it is reported that Muhammad said women lack common sense. And then when we go to Jami' at-Tirmidhi 2613, we again see Muhammad saying that women lack common sense. So it's clear from these hadiths that Muhammad did not live up to the standard of free speech that Muslims want implemented, and that he insulted and offended women by saying, "A nation will never succeed with a woman as their ruler. Women are deficient in intelligence and they lack common sense." So Muslims, are you now going to reprimand Muhammad for insulting and offending women? Of course you won't. So, in conclusion, we have seen that the punishment for blasphemy against Muhammad is that the person should be killed. Muslims should strive against blasphemers, critiques, and mockers of Muhammad with physical force, i.e., by killing them. A woman was killed for critiquing and mocking Muhammad, and Muhammad allowed for the murder to go unpunished. When the Prime Minister of France showed he supports free speech and is against Islamic terrorism by projecting Charlie Hebdo cartoons onto a government building, the Muslims responded by boycotting the buying of goods from France. Muslims also responded to Macron by saying that free speech should not be allowed if it offends or insults people and their religious beliefs. But when we take this standard of having free speech only when it doesn't offend people or insult people and their religious beliefs and then apply it to the Quran, we find that the Quran is offensive to everyone that is not a Muslim, and Allah continues to hurl insults at people based off their religious beliefs. And then when we apply the Muslim free speech standard to Muhammad, we find Muhammad's actions and words are considered offensive to people and their religious beliefs. So Muslims, are you going to ban the Quran for its violation of free speech as it insults everyone who's not a Muslim? Are you going to reprimand Muhammad for his disrespect towards other people's religions and insulting Turkish people, Ethiopians, and women? Of course you won't.